Having established the idea of distributive justice and taken a look at a utilitarian approach to justice in distribution, we're now going to look at a different view, that of Nozick. While we might have been familiar with the utilitarian view from what we've been looking at in terms of ethical acts in week 1, Nozick takes quite a different approach. It is more deontological, but what it's based on is the idea that we have these inalienable rights. And it's the protection of these rights or entitlements. So to Nozick, the idea of a just distribution is one where that distribution is what people are entitled to. So he's looking at how do we know if someone's entitled to the distribution of benefits and burdens that we actually have in society. So he sees property rights as really tightly tied to other rights, such as the right to life, the right to be free or to have liberty and to choose, the right to pursue happiness, etc. Property is part of those inalienable rights of humans. So why don't we get into it and see how we approach this? Given that it's a libertarian view, what we need to find is a system where people are free to live as they desire. So they don't want to be coerced even by government. Government, under a libertarian view, has a very small role. And there's a classic piece of analysis around this. For instance, we can say taxation, which we don't have a choice to pay. We all pay tax. We have to under the law. So therefore, that's actually coerced payment. And what is coerced payment? Well, a coerced payment is actually the fruits of your labour. So in many ways, a coerced payment is forced labour. You have to pay 20% of your earnings in tax, then if I go to work 5 days a week, it means 1 day a week I'm actually working for the government. So that's a forced labour. And what's another word that we used for forced labour? Well, we could use another word like slavery. So what we can see is this basic idea of a libertarian is that the taxation is the morally equivalent of slavery because we have no choice in it. We're forced to do it. So the approach here is how do we allow this freedom to choose, one of these fundamental rights that were really early on identified by John Locke. So Nozick does draw a lot on John Locke's ideas, and that original analysis comes from a kind of Lockean analysis of property rights. Nozick's view is that you're entitled to property provided you've acquired it fairly. So that's the central element to a just distribution. Have you acquired the property that you have fairly? If you have, that's a just distribution under this analysis. To think about how we know whether we've acquired something fairly, Nozick comes up with 2 principles. So let's have a look at those 2 principles. So the first principle is that of original acquisition. So if someone acquires a property by making it yourself, okay, so really this is about using your labour. And you can use your head or you can use your hands, but whatever you create, you're naturally entitled to that thing. Or you can sell that thing in terms of labour. Note also, because of the time that he's in, he's also talking about not only your labour, but also where you remake something or take something from unowned wilderness. Okay. So if no one else owns it, and you take it and you can make it valuable, then you're entitled to that particular property. Now, there were a number of disclaimers that we don't go into here, which included things like not taking too much, leaving enough for other people, but we're not going to go into that. But just think about it this way. Original acquisition is what you actually make or develop or think of, those ideas you're entitled to, as well as taking things that are not useful to others and using them, if they don't own them, as long as no one else owns them. The second way that you can justly acquire something is by transfer. So if you exchange or purchase something or get it as a gift, then you justly acquired it and you're entitled to it. So that allows market mechanisms and normal transfer as long as it's done justly. So you can't steal something, you can't trick someone, or you can't force them. Those three things would void this acquisition by transfer. So, provided we have either original acquisition or just acquisition by transfer repeatedly done, then the person is entitled to the property, and the way that that property is distributed in society is considered just. Probably an important point to stress here is if the chain of acquisition leads to some lack of justice, then the end person hasn't justly acquired it. So let's take the situation where X, for some reason, makes a chair. Okay, so they buy some wood and they make a chair. So they have A transferred in, they've bought the wood, but they have this original acquisition in that they've made the chair out of the wood. Then they sell it to Y. Has Y got it justly? Yes. Then imagine that Z steals the chair. Has Z justly acquired it? No, they haven't. But what happens if A buys the chair off Z? What happens in that case? Again, Nozick is going to say this has not been justly acquired because our chain of acquisition by transfer has been broken. And that's what we can see in this example here. I'll leave you to go through it, but it's about that chain of acquisition being just all the way through. Now, to make the point that just acquisition doesn't equal equality of distribution, he came up with a very famous example. Imagine you had a famous sports person. Now, Nozick uses Wilt Chamberlain. He was a very famous basketball player in the US, but we could use anyone. It could be a sports person, could be an artist, could be a brain surgeon. It doesn't matter who it is, but I think we all probably identify more with a very famous name. So we might think of Kobe as a modern basketball player or Messi as a soccer player. Why don't we go for that? Soccer's a pretty international game. So let's go with Messi. So imagine Messi signs a contract where he's going to get $5 from the price of each ticket to a Barcelona match. So he plays for Barcelona, for those who don't know. So imagine he's going to get $5 for every ticket. So whenever someone buys a ticket, that person drops an extra $5 into a box, or they, in the modern world, they hit a button on a website, right, where the money then gets transferred to Messi. So every time they buy a ticket, they hit another button that gives $5 to Messi. And imagine that 1 million people buy tickets over the course of a season. In that case, Messi is going to earn $5 million, and each time a spectator goes, they have $5 less. So you can see that's a very unequal income. We've given a huge amount of money over to Messi. That's a lot more unequal than what it was before. But no, people have done this freely. They could have gone or not gone, and in fact we could have made this a voluntary contribution. So the spectators are freely paying $5, and in that way it's not really unjust. If we were to try and make an even distribution, we're going to have to take the $5 million off Messi. And you go, is that just? No, that's probably unjust, right? Because it's been voluntarily agreed upon. This is one of the reasons, or the key reason actually, why Nozick is not so much worried about the inequality in distribution, but about whether people are entitled to the distribution that is there at the moment. It's about that right to property and their entitlement to the property. Of course, as with any theory, there are criticisms. Many, in fact most, would actually argue that that some coercion by government is necessary even to uphold property rights. Right? We need the courts, we need a system of law. We actually need the rule of law. And then it becomes, well, who's going to pay for the rule of law? Can we do that voluntarily? That's probably not going to work. So this ideal is a little bit Pollyanna, that we can't have some coercion of government. We're going to need some. And even strong libertarians would suggest the rule of law, the defence of the realm, are the kinds of areas where people should be coerced to pay a certain amount of tax. That's something government should be involved in. So to be in society, we do have to sacrifice some liberty. What we start arguing about is how much of that liberty do we need to sacrifice to be in society. And the other key criticism is that idea of inequality. Okay, so the issue that arises out of inequality is that maybe people get property that they don't deserve. For instance, someone who inherits a lot of wealth, do they really deserve that particular wealth? Is that fair? So there's some key criticisms. Thus far, we've looked at two classic approaches to justice in distribution, that utilitarian approach and now Nozick's approach to justice. Next, we're going to pop in and have a look at a different approach from the 20th century, Rawls, and the idea that when we're in society, we have a social contract. And that's on our next video.